Hello, I'm Daniel Firstman, Professor of Political Science at the State College of Florida, and welcome to another episode of SCF on Campus. Today's show will talk about the Model United Nations program at the State College of Florida and how it is benefiting our students, our school, and our community. With me today are several members of the Fall and Spring Model United Nations teams who have been an integral part of the program and are here to discuss what a Model United Nations experience is all about. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started. Our panel today includes Jared Paget.
Thank you for having me.
Ralph Monesteem.
Thank you for having me.
Emily Moore.
Thank you for having me.
Alessandra DeVivo.
Thank you for having me.
And Donald Evans Reimel III.
Hi, how are you?
I think we'll actually start with you, Evans. Can you just tell the viewers at home what Model United Nations is all about?
Sure. So at many universities, it's a club, but at SCF, it's actually a full-blown class that we spend the entire semester preparing for. There's a conference towards the end of the semester. That's our ultimate goal, but we spend a lot of time preparing. Each semester, we're assigned a country, for instance, like Italy or Australia or the United Kingdom. And then we spend about 10 weeks preparing, writing position papers based on what our country's positions are on the different committees in the Model United Nations that we are assigned to, such as the Security Council, the General Assembly, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and so forth. So we write these are two-page papers that we write, detailing on different topics that are assigned to us. And then we submit those and they're graded. But then we really get to know our country, and then we go to the conference where we try to discuss the topics that were handed to us and try to come up with real life resolutions and ways to fix them. So it's a 3-day conference that we do, and so we really get into, we spend long days preparing for it, and we work with other countries from around the nation. It's the Southern Model United Nations, but they come from Texas all the way up to New York. So you get a lot of different universities.
So I'm curious, from some of the other members of the panel, 3-day conference, what do you do, whether it's in Atlanta or Charlotte, what do you do for 3 days?
That's a great question. So I actually had the opportunity to attend 2 different conferences, the one in Atlanta in the fall of 2012 and spring 2013 in Charlotte. And it's a 3-day conference. A lot of it you may think is college students giving speeches about the country that they're representing. But most of the work is really done outside of the committee room, and that's in the caucuses that they do at these conventions. And in the caucuses is when you really get to sit down and you get to work with different members from the different representing nations and countries, and you get to develop your papers that you're going to be submitting that are going to become some of these policies for the United Nations. So when you go back in to the conferences and the committees that you're in, you're actually discussing what you worked on during the conference, during the caucuses that you were in, and you're able to share your ideas with everyone else to gain support from the international community.
Excellent. Well, give the viewers at home maybe some sense of what these different committees are, right? So much of your experience in Model United Nations is based around what country you're assigned and then what committee you're working in. So what are some of the different committees that you all have experienced in your time in Model UN?
I've experienced General Assembly plenary twice, so it's fun.
Yeah, and that's the big one, right? The General Assembly, that's when people at home are thinking about the huge Model UN General Assembly room, that's
what I did. It's pretty stressful, but you learn a lot, and you definitely learn how to work with people a lot, so.
Excellent. More stressful, giving a speech to 200 people or being on TV?
Probably giving a speech, I want to say, because I didn't do it.
It's good preparation. So others, what different committees have you been on?
Well, this was my first time, and I was actually on the World Health Organization. That committee in itself was more so, I wouldn't necessarily say as involved as the other ones as the Security Council, but we were actually coming up with more or less realistic approaches towards trying to find a cure for AIDS or trying to find a way to, more so eradicate poverty and find children or find ways to find better means to for food for malnourished children in what we consider lesser developed countries. So that experience alone and being able to work with roughly 60 other students from different colleges and universities across the land was a great experience for myself.
Emily, what committee were you on?
I was on the General Assembly plenary with Allie. We were partners, and we worked a lot. We attempted to divide and conquer and try to work with different countries on working papers, but we found that it was easier to work together and get things done that way.
Definitely an advantage as the program grows and we get more and more students who are interested. For this coming semester's class, I think pretty much everyone is going to have a partner, which does definitely help. I think actually you're the only two on the panel that have had partners before. So what were some of the topics that you had? I mean, we heard HIV/AIDS and dealing with the disasters and healthcare after disasters. What are some of the other topics that you got a chance to learn about?
Yeah, one of the committee I served on when I represented South Korea was the United Nations Development Program. And this committee is in 177 different nations around the world, and also in the local governments of those countries. And what the United Nations Development Program does is it pairs less developed countries with more developed countries, so the international community can help one another develop their own countries and their nations. And since I was representing South Korea is a country that developed a lot during the 1945 up to 1990, and it received a lot of help from the international community during that time from other more developed nations. So during the conference, we worked with less developed nations, trying to pair them to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce some of the natural disasters that happen in their countries. And so it's a really great, basically it's team building between countries as they develop their nation.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to that. You might get that exercise in class if it's, if you're doing small groups, but there's nothing quite like having 500 people all in the same building, all faithfully representing their countries to a greater or lesser extent, and then really trying to convince, if you're South Korea and you're talking to the delegate from North Korea, that's an experience that's difficult to replicate in the classroom. So some of the other issues you worked on.
So this past semester I was on the United Nations Security Council as the United Kingdom, and what we discussed at the conference was organized crime throughout the world and how to try to combat that. It's a huge issue in many countries. United States and Mexico have their own issues. China has issues. Other countries along with that. But what we developed was an international sanctions list that the Security Council could put in place to combat these organizations that have already been identified. We thought it was pretty effective. Some of the other issues that we were hoping to cover, what we didn't at the conference, would be like the current crisis in the Sudan, global terror, a decade after 9/11, and the use of children soldiers in the world. It's a crime against humanity.
And it seems to be a topic that comes up quite often at these Model United Nations conferences. And if there's ever a downside to Model United Nations, it's that you look at some of the topics that get discussed year after year, and you're like, oh, these are still being discussed because the world hasn't solved it yet.
That's definitely the truth.
So do you remember anything that the General Assembly dealt with in either of those conferences?
We worked with the Millennium Development Goals a lot,
Yep.
and trying to find ways to improve them.
Achieve them.
Yes.
Can you tell the viewers at home just like what are the Millennium Development Goals all about?
Well, there's 8 of them. The ones that haven't been reached so far is maternal mortality, gender equality, and global partnerships. So,
I'm impressed you had that list ready offhand. I didn't prep you with that question. That's fantastic.
So those are the ones we kind of focused more on, and that was Charlotte. And then in Atlanta, I also focused on water accessibility and equality, and we were the United Kingdom, so we didn't have any major problems with that, but the United Kingdom did have a lot of programs in place that were helping other countries like Bangladesh.
And I know when we did South Korea, and gender equality is a very big deal there because they just elected their first woman president, and they're actually going down on the list instead of increasing. Mm-hmm. So I know that's a big deal there.
Yeah, that was I remember that was a pretty interesting topic. Sometimes they're hit or miss. They can be more or less interesting. Hopefully you get at least one that's good. Yeah. So Evans mentioned that, and it is true at SCF, this is a 3-credit class that runs every semester. A lot of colleges do it as clubs. Some do it as a weird hybrid. So I'm thinking, if I'm sitting at home right now and I'm hearing all these great things that you're doing at the conference, but I'm wondering, what do you do for 10 weeks? How do you prepare for this? What goes into that?
Lots of speeches.
Lots of research. Yeah. Emily and I spent hours and hours in the ARC at SCF researching and trying to stumble upon relevant information. So, yeah.
I mean, you really got to dig deep to find what your country really believes, because when you get there, you've got to be full-blown role-playing. You've got to be the United Kingdom. You have to be South Korea. So you really need to know in every situation, especially on some of the broader committees like General Assembly or the Security Council, you have to know all the different aspects, all the different angles that could happen. When a country approaches you and say, hey, what do you think about this? You have to have something in your pocket that you can dig out and present so that you're being authentic to your country. And that really shows if you can do that. Again, the position papers, you guys want to talk about the position papers? It's like the big thing we do preparation-wise.
Yeah, so what are position papers?
The position papers are more or less how your stance or your country's stance on a particular topic. With that, you also have to do more so like conjunctions when you get to the conference, because you'll have, as Evan stated, someone say, what's your opinion on this? And you definitely have to know in detail how the country would stand. But then again, you have to go ahead and find an alternative so both countries can actually have a way of being able to pass or get past their main objective in order to accomplish the main goal. So with the position papers, it's more so that, and for me, the most nerving way about it was when I first got there, I didn't realize how many people actually read my paper. So,
when coming up to you, Ralph, man, your paper was great.
And I'm like, okay, how did you read my paper? So it was very nervous, but it was the simple fact that, being able to be in a room with people who actually share your same goal as far as trying to make, Earth and our respective countries a better place for the ones who can't necessarily help themselves. I think that was more uplifting than anything else. And then being able to read it in black and white on someone else's paper, well, you know what, this is how they feel, this is how the country sees it. It was very inspiring, to be honest with you.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on position papers?
Yeah, well, with the 10-week processes you were talking about with the State College of Florida being a class instead of a club, you can really tell when you get to the conference what universities have put the amount of time in to pull off a good conference representing their country. And that shows at the State College of Florida that we've spent 10 weeks really looking into these papers. We start off researching specifically about the country, and we go into specifically about our committee, and then we start breaking it down into ideas and positions that we want to bring to the conference. So during the 10 weeks, it's a lot of research. It's a lot of speech giving. So this is a great class for learning some speeches, as Ali, I think, learned this past year, giving speeches in front of 200 people. But it's definitely a lot of work that goes in during those 10 weeks, but it shows when you get there that you've put that work in.
And that's a great segue. I didn't set you up for that, but I know you're all humble, so I'm allowed to brag on your behalf. But both the fall and the spring groups did win Best Position Paper awards at both of their conferences, in addition to the fall group also winning a team-wide award and Evans winning an individual award. So just a tremendous performance for a program that's only been around for 3 years now, and so just getting started. So I just congratulate you all on that. It's really impressive work that you put into that, and really showed. So I'm really curious. We always have this conversation when we're flying back after the conference, and so there's been a little bit of time now, so we have a little bit of a lag. I can see what really sticks. What did Model UN give you? What did you take from the experience? What did you learn from it? What skills or what knowledge did you really feel like you gained from having done Model United Nations?
I think it's probably the interpersonal skills that you learn at the conference would be, for me, the number one thing that you get from it. At the conference, you have to work with people that don't necessarily want to work with you. Based on their country's positions. You have to figure out ways to, you have to figure out ways to come up with solutions that everyone can be happy with. At least the majority of people can be happy with. You have to, try to fix every little thing. You're working on these resolutions that may be 2, 3, 4 pages long that are, very fine point. Every single word gets criticized by everyone in the entire room. And, it may be 15, it may be 200 people. So, you really have to get the detail down. And working with the other people to get that done is probably the hardest thing at the conference. And if you can do it effectively and you can learn from that, it can help you in your real life situations when you're working with other people on projects at work and so forth.
Sure, that's completely unrelated to your being the SGA president. I can't see how that would ever be applicable in that environment in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I wouldn't be the SGA president without Model UN, that's for sure.
Oh, don't blame us for that. We're not responsible. So other thoughts from the other panelists on what you learned from it, what you gained?
I think for me, the biggest thing was networking. If you didn't sell yourself and you didn't sell your position, you pretty much crashed and burned. I've seen several people that were more so didn't want to work with anyone. Some of them didn't want to go approach anyone and speak. So they were pretty much left on the outside looking in. But once you actually got in there and told and spoke to different people and say, hey, you know, I'm willing to compromise with this. What are you willing to compromise about? Or just say, hey, you know what, is there a way that when we go in the caucus, can we speak on a one-on-one basis? And it made the difference out of everything. I mean, outside of Germany, you know, burning my paper, but you know,
we're not bitter about that.
We're not
anyway.
bitter about that at all.
It's been 2 months. You're moving past it.
Still a little
but
hurt,
surely.
but otherwise than that, it was definitely a great experience. Networking was definitely the key for the World Health Organization.
We're gonna have to send a copy of this to the school that represented Germany, just so they understand. Just how
That'd be
deeply that got you. So other thoughts?
One of the words that Ralph used I noticed was compromise, and that's one of the things I really learned at the conference. As a political science student, I want to go into government one day, and compromise and working with others is something that you really have to do. So when you're representing a country like South Korea, you're going to have to work with countries like North Korea, and you're going to have to come up with compromises that will not only affect those two countries, but that are also going to affect other countries around the world as well. And that's a skill that I think we've all learned is working with one another at the conferences to come out for the common good of countries all over the world.
Yeah, I think another thing is getting other countries' perspectives. When you spend 10 weeks prepping for another country, I did Italy, Australia, and the United Kingdom in my 3 years. And just getting the different viewpoints, it can be kind of shocking. And then having to go and sell those different viewpoints, even when they're, if they may be completely different than your own. Less so with the United Kingdom, but it's really, you have to immerse yourself and get that different viewpoint and understand it. And that also helps you, understanding another person's viewpoint, so you can move forward.
Absolutely. A little empathy.
I think it's really cool. It kind of gives you an insight on what happens in the real world. And kind of lets you see what really goes on in the United Nations without being in the United Nations.
Definitely a little bit of an advantage there. I was, as Jared, as you were talking about compromise, I sort of thought maybe we just send all of the United States Congress to like a model UN, see what happens afterwards. Imagine that would go really well. So, do you have a favorite model United Nations experience? That could be from the conference, that could be from class, could be anything that you just, what's the first experience you think of when you think, model United Nations?
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Maybe the second or third, depending on what you're thinking of first. Maybe go down the list a little bit there.
For me, I would say when on the downtime, when you're actually speaking to different individuals from different schools and knowing that everyone is here for the same goal. Majority of everyone there that I met are poli-psych or, some were doing criminal justice, some were doing law, but in the end run, everyone was looking at political goals. Once they get to a certain age, I want to run for the House of Representatives, I want to run for Senate, I would like to work for the government, and that was just more so everyone wanting to do that civic duty. Nothing came up about being rich, and it was all about
That's good if they're going to do most of those things.
Pretty much, But it was just a great experience, just sitting down, listening to everyone else, and everybody has the same common goal in the long run. So that right there was the greatest feat for me, and I even told my wife when I came back, I was like, I've never been around so many people outside of athletics that had one common goal. And it was just more inspiring than anything else.
You're going to have to get your daughter into Model UN when she gets old enough. She came to enough classes, so she's already like halfway in there.
Definitely.
Other favorite experiences?
One experience I remember, for example, is you can actually testify to this too. I was really excited about the topic I was giving, and I had a speech prepared, and at the conference you have normally it's sometimes 45 seconds or 60 seconds to give a speech. And I had probably a 2.5 minute speech written down, going up there. And so I get up there and I'm reading it really, really fast. And I was able to get all the points in that I wanted to. And I know Danny was there to witness that in action.
I recorded it, in fact, yeah.
And recorded it, in fact. So we do have that. But it was that was one of the moments I remember, just when I was really excited about the topic that I was doing, and was putting the work in and getting up there and was trying to fit more information than I had time for.
That has been memorialized for all of time. I show it to future classes. They've actually all seen that video, so they're familiar with it.
Yeah, for
Other
me,
favorite memories?
my first year when I was a senior in high school doing this as a dual enrollment class, I'm 17 years old, and you go to the conference, and everyone there is, full-blown college, and getting up there, my first committee was UNCTAD, which is a plenary size committee, which means it's, almost General Assembly size. And getting up there, and I was like in the top 10 to speak at the very beginning of the conference or something like that. And I'm just like, wow, I'm getting up here and speaking in front of all these people. And I went up there and did it. And then the second time it was a little bit easier. And the third time was a little bit easier. But the first time I remember just getting up there and just like, wow, so many people. There's a microphone, and it was kind of life-changing because I'd never done that before. And it kind of gave me the confidence to be like, hey, I can do that. So
After you've talked to that, I mean, everything else is easy.
yeah.
So absolutely. Katie's favorite moment?
Well, it's not really a favorite moment, but I kind of like to see how I did at the first conference and then how I did at the second one, because then I had people coming up to me and being like, you're so good at this. And I was like, no, I act like I know what I'm doing, and it kind of works. And but then also I had people coming up to me, they're like, oh, you're a head delegate, you know what you're doing. And I was trying to explain to like the new people, the first timers, how it worked. And it was really fun because you kind of get to take a leadership role in something, and then they like become your friends. And I still talk to a lot of people that I met at the Model United Nations
Really?
conference. Yeah, I do.
To others of you?
I've actually visited some.
My goodness, I have to start putting that in the recruitment material. Friends for life. That's it. Emily, if you had a moment, I didn't want to leave you out there.
Well, the speeches were pretty interesting. It was pretty nerve-wracking to get up there the first time and give a speech. I think from doing the Phi Theta Kappa induction ceremonies helped a little bit because I had that under my belt, but it was fine after the first time, and people would come up to you and go, you did a great job.
I can remember this most recent conference. We had poor Charles, who's doing it again, so clearly he recovered nicely. But I tell you all that as soon as the speakers list opens, which is the list that has every country that's going to speak in what order they're going to speak in, you should have your country placard up immediately. Charles was sitting right in the front row, and he took it very seriously, and so he was the very first person to talk at his first conference, had no idea what he was supposed to say because he was going to watch other people talk ahead of him. And I remember I saw him that night, and he's like, I'm never talking again. And it took all of Friday working on him, and then on Saturday he ended up giving 3 speeches. So there is that, just getting that over that fear, especially if the first time doesn't go so well. But so unfortunately, we are almost out of time. It goes really quickly when you're talking about fun things. But I thought maybe we would just go around the panel one more time and start with Jared, and let's make our way over. And any final thoughts you have about Model UN, either in general, about the experience, whether you'd recommend it to others, who would be good for, anything like that, just sort of final thoughts.
Yeah, so I definitely highly recommend joining the Model United Nations program, whether it's at State College of Florida or if you're at another university and you want to join it as an extracurricular activity in a club. It really teaches you a lot of useful life skills. It's definitely something to do if you're interested in political science, international relations, public administration, to just go into it. When I first joined Model United Nations, I didn't really know what it was about or knew what I was getting myself into, but I came back and did it 2 years in a row, and now getting involved at the University of Florida in it as well. So if you have the opportunity, just go for it.
Excellent. Thank you. Ralph?
Well, I second that. For myself, I was more so just a criminal justice major. I actually switched to international relations with an emphasis on conflict resolution, and the UN model course actually springboarded for me and gave me a better insight on what I'm looking forward to in the future. So if you definitely have the will and the heart to go ahead and say, you know what, I want to help, I want to make a change, I want to do something entirely different, this would be the best platform to start off so you can know exactly what you're getting yourself into.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd recommend it to other people who are interested in this stuff. Going in, I was actually a hospitality management major, and coming out, I was a history major.
I'm so sorry.
Going to the conference, it was so much fun. You got to meet a lot of new people and form friendships, and it was worth it.
Excellent.
Yeah, I agree. Not even just if you're any major, this will help you because it helps you with your speaking skills, and you learn to network, and it's helpful. And then you make friends, like I made with Emily. Like she has to deal with me now. It's fun though. It's a lot of work, definitely, but it's something that at least you should try once.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of these guys. For me, coming in, as a senior in high school, doing it, it was very, very daunting of a task. It was the second semester I'd ever even been in college, and I'm doing something that's highly intensive. Your courses are pretty intensive work-wise, definitely compared to a lot of the other classes I've been taking in the past. And then just the development that I've had over the last 3 years doing it each time, just like completely a next level of my interpersonal skills, my speaking skills. I was a homeschooler growing up. My entire education prior to college was homeschooled. So I didn't get a lot of that outside of other stuff like Boy Scouts and church and so forth. So getting that out there, and I'm a business major myself. So I'm not necessarily looking to go directly into it right now, international relations or so forth. But loving what's going on in the world and understanding the international connections and stuff like that, and not even realizing how much I would enjoy it going into it, I was really glad that I had the opportunity to do it. So I definitely recommend it to anybody who likes to imagine what's going on and imagine that they can change something, because you really get that chance.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone on the panel for taking the time out of their busy schedules to come and talk with us about Model United Nations. I'd like to take a minute just to thank the State College of Florida. Their support for the program has been fantastic and is virtually unparalleled among a lot of the other faculty that I talked to from other schools. So thank you to them for that. And then it's just to me and the panelists to thank all of you for watching this special episode of SCF on Campus about our Model United Nations program. Thank you.